Yo, it's Guido coming at you with the Tactics Talk and a tank review of the Tier 6 Polish medium tank, the 40TP Habicha. Habicha? The Hibachi. The first of two Hibachis. It's the Tier 6 one. The medium tank in the new Polish line. As usual, we'll do an overview. We'll talk about tech tree considerations. Look at the 3D model. Do a comparison amongst other Tier 6 mediums. Take a look at my stats, how I did on my grind, how my setup is, or what my setup is. And then we'll take a look at a couple examples of gameplay for the Tier 6 Polish medium tank, the 40TP Habicha, the Hibachi. All right, off we go. Looking at the overview of the 40TP Habicha. Habicha? The Hibachi. Here it is. At first when I looked at it, I thought, man, that's a really large tank. But actually, amongst the other Tier 6 medium tanks, it's about the same size. Pudel's quite a bit larger. The Swiss tank is smaller, but everything else is roughly the same size. Cromwell is shorter, but as long. 3485 we looked at. The Schmaltram is just a big tank all around. 3001D, about the same size. 3001P, quite a bit larger. That's a beast of a Tier 6 premium right there. So you're really not giving up much in size, although the turret is quite large. It's center mounted, so neither towards the back nor towards the front. And that has been a bit of an issue with the Polish tanks as far as you do stick out a lot of the front of your tank when you're coming around a corner. It helps out a little bit in side scraping. It's better than a forward-mounted turret than on side scraping. So it's actually interesting as far as that goes. According to the write-up up here, it's a combination of some both Soviet and German design elements, unknown where that exactly comes from. Sort of makes sense before the war started that Poland was attempting to stay friends with both sides there, so they may have been having some kind of technical help from both sides. It does resemble to some extent kind of a German look that's supposed to be a German turret on a Soviet type of chassis, loosely based anyway. But it never saw light of day. It's a prototype tank. Nothing really other than to say it's pretty much another one of fantasy tanks. But actually the model on this is not bad. Pretty cool looking. A lot of detail was put into this for a tank that was never actually built. Kind of cool. You can see it's got a sloped upper plate, sloped bottom plate, not as highly sloped, but there's a flat plate right there. A large gun mantlet, and then a large side turret right there, which is easily hit, and then a very big billboard kind of side of the tank, and a lot of space right here to punch shots through. If you look down, the hole actually goes down quite low there, so avoiding the tracks while shooting into the side of it is relatively easy. All right, that is it for the overview. Let's take a look at some of the tech tree considerations for the 40TP Habicha. Am I saying that right? I have no idea. All right, let's talk tech tree considerations for the 40TP, the Tier 6 Habicha. All right, you came from the 25TP, you went to the 40TP. Those are both medium tanks. The Tier 5 and the Tier 6 are medium tanks. The Tier 7 and above are heavy tanks. However, the crew positions and qualifications are exactly the same from Tier 5 to 10. Remember at 3 and 4 you had a radio operator, although at Tier 2 you had the same setup as you do at Tier 5. Drove me a little bit crazy. But you probably won't be dragging crews up from the 2 to the 4. Start at 5. If you have a Pudel crew, dump them in there. If you had the other heavy, whatever that thing's called, you might want to dump them in there or wait for the Tier 7. Lots of options right there. As far as the setup for the tank itself goes and the modules, I'll jump into the 25TP first. If you unlocked this gun right here, it's one of the few times the gun moves early on in this grind to the next tier. I kind of recommend that at the Tier 5. Get that thing unlocked. It's the, what is it, 75mm WZ 3637, because if you come over to the TP, the 3637 is right there. That will let you at least have this Tier 6 gun and not this Tier 5 gun, which is not very good at all. Realize that you can put this Tier 6 gun on the tank without the tracks. You can put the engine without the tracks. You cannot put the turret without the tracks, and you're going to need the turret for this next gun. So whatever you do, you're going to have to get the tracks before you get this turret and you get to the gun that actually makes this thing what it's supposed to be, which is a slow medium with a big stick. And we'll talk about that as we go, but those are the considerations for how to upgrade this thing. Again, I'd get this gun on the Tier 5. That really makes the Tier 5. Then when you come in here, you've at least got that to begin with. Knock out the tracks, get your turret and your gun, and you're off to the races with the best version that this can be, grabbing the engine as well. What I did is I unlocked everything with free experience. I Iron Manned it up to about the Tier 5, and then I used free experience for the Tier 6 and some of the 7 I've run out for the rest of them, so I'll be Iron Manning it by force because I have no free experience from now on. But I played this tank fully upgraded from the beginning, so I'm not going to be able to speak very well to this gun. However, just looking at its stats, it is going to struggle pretty well at Tier 6, especially when you start talking about seeing Tier H, which is always going to be a problem with a Tier 6 grind. And those are the tech tree considerations and things to think about. We'll move on to the 3D model. All right, here we have the 3D model. You can see that everything's relatively flat as far as it's not curved, it's all flat angles. We start down at the very bottom, it's got 20 millimeters, highly angled on the bottom, but any lookup shots can easily go into that. Got a fairly thick 90 degrees on what is a relatively flat, slightly angled area, a more highly angled area of 50, and then up here on the flat part again, 110, which is all pretty good. You see the sides of the turret, and this section right here is 130, and then it's got this kind of strange decreasing thickness as it goes back, 110, and then there's a slice of 80, and then there's a slice above it of 40, and it does the same thing at the back, but that's that curved mantlet right there that you can see going on. The top of the roof is only 25, so it can be overmatched, and then you've got the face of the cupola here, 70 and 80 down there towards the bottom. The sides are 40, the sides of the turret are 60, which is decent, and some angling here as well. You can see that it is mid-turret mounted, and angling will help this tank based on the way the front of it is designed. It's not a pike nose or a rounded nose or anything, but there are so many different angles going on. It's really hard to kind of protect all that all at once, depending on whether someone's above you looking down or below you or some of the other things that go on in this game. So really what you've got is a fairly decently armored medium that struggles because it thinks it's a heavy. We'll talk about that when we get into the replays and things. This is something that doesn't work too well in World of Tanks. The slow, heavily armored medium tends to be just a bad heavy. Just a bad heavy, but those are the armor profiles and things to think about on the 3D model of the tank, and we'll move on to the comparison. The comparison amongst its peers. This is an interesting story on this. All right, average damage 240, so it wins. Nope, not quite. It's tied with the P43. By the way, the P43 and the 40TP are basically the same tank with a couple small differences. So if you've recently ground the Italian line and you liked the P43 BIS, then you'll probably like the 40TP. They fight a lot the same. Penetration is very good on the 40TP, so everything is built around the gun on this thing. What's that going to cost you? Well, it's going to cost you rate of fire, which is going to be about the worst. In fact, it is the worst out of all of these, even worse than the P43 BIS, who's carrying the same alpha and has less penetration. See how the trade-offs are made there. Reload time is one of the worst, if not the worst. Yes, it is the worst. Turret traverse is okay. It's got a -8 gun depression, which is comfortable, not as nice as it could be, but it's all right. And it's got that trademark Polish inability to look up, which I can't figure out. Some of the other tanks on this chart have 15s as well, but this has been a bit of a problem with all the Polish tanks. Lookup is not very easy. Aim time at 259 is one of the worst in that tier, even amongst heavies. I mean, 259, it takes forever for that big stick to aim in. And it's not helped by the fact that your dispersion is one of the largest as well, tied for the largest at 0.38. It makes it a very derpy gun. And oh my gosh, average damage per minute is winner chicken dinner the lowest at 1,767. It's even worse than some of the autoloader DPMs, which happen to be a little bit low to try to balance out the fact that they have the burst capability right there. For some reason, it is nearly 300 lower than the P43 BIS, which has a similar reload time, a similar rate of fire, and also does 240 alpha, but you're getting 6 more standard pen out of the 40TP. I do not know if that all balances out. The other part of it is that you're going to carry a little bit more armor. So you're paying for that big gun with lots of penetration for a slow, slightly armored, bad heavy at the end of the day. Hit points are 750 points. That's not bad. There's that armor I'm talking about. It wins in the hull and turret armor department. Not really what you want from your medium. Kind of not the point of a medium. You can see that the P40 is close, but that 130 is a winner by a long shot on the turret. But if you remember, that 130 is not a very large part of the turret, and the way the turret's angled, that's not all the turret that is showing. That is just that gun mantlet portion and those little side cheeks are the only thing that's really 130. So that number is a little bit misleading, to be quite honest. There's a whole bunch of side of the turret, and depending on where the turret is pointing, you may be able to get into those kind of sides of that angled front turret, or that German style turret right there. So yes, 130 is the thickest part of it, but it's probably not as useful as you would think right there. 90 on the whole armor, same thing. That's on 2 different strips. The other strips are much less than 90. Granted, they're angled, but again, depending on all the different angles you can be fired on in World of Tanks. So a little bit misleading. The armor looks a lot better on paper than it actually works in the game. And in any event, it's lower than a lot of the heavies, which it is trying to emulate for some reason. As far as the mobility goes, it's pretty awful. 450 horsepower with a specific power of 11.2. Take a gander at the others on that. The other worst one, which is a relatively slow medium, is 15.66 for the P43 BIS. It is atrociously slow and cannot accelerate. That 50's got to be a lie. I never saw 50 unless I was going downhill. It simply cannot do 50. I don't know where that number comes from, to be quite honest. It's a downhill number. Traverse speed is okay. It has an okay time spinning around. It doesn't get circled too badly, but it's certainly not spry by any stretch of the imagination. The concealment, strangely, is pretty good actually for such a kind of big boxy tank right there. I guess it's because it's moving too slow to be seen. I don't know. Maybe it is like Drax the Destroyer. It is moving too slow to be seen. The view range is 360 and the signal range is 430, which is bizarre. All the rest of it, well, there's a 548, but we got some 700s. This number, I say it every time, I can't figure out what they're trying to do with this number. It's the strangest thing. It's just an afterthought. You've got some tanks at 700, you've got some tanks down at 430 in the same tier. Incredible. But about this tier anyway, the map is saturated and it simply doesn't have any meaning. Alright, so it's hang your hat time. What would Guido hang his hat on this one? Well, you got the big stick. You're dropping 240 at tier 6 from a medium, and you got a pretty good penetration, but it comes at the price of a derpy gun, some armor that's only very situationally and occasionally useful, and it's extremely slow. What is that all in one package? It's like a bad heavy that wants to run with the mediums but can't, and that just doesn't work that well in World of Tanks. I'm not saying it's a terrible tank, it's just this kind of balancing idea of the armored medium doesn't really work. It's kind of like the Zersteuer BF-110. It looked like a really good thing on paper. It was going to be a fighter destroyer, but it simply couldn't do that role because it was just too fat and ungainly and slow. So all the firepower was never able to be brought to bear. Let's move on from here. Well, how did Guido do in this? What were my stats? I played 39 battles to unlock everything. Remember that I had unlocked all the modules, so I didn't have to grind any modules. So 39 battles to get to the next tier after the modules were done. Add X number of battles if you're going to grind it Iron Man. I got a 46% win rate in it with a 738 average experience. These were all reasonable for a tier 6 medium for my skill level. We're looking at 23% battle survived. That was low. And to some extent, that speaks to a lot of its lack of mobility and not being able to move around the battlefield when needed. Its capability to flex like a medium is nowhere near any other medium at tier 6. It's just truly horrendous. You are moving to a side and you will have a hard time either flexing to other places that need mediums to flex to, or getting to damage late game. When it's gobble up the damage time, this thing will just struggle in that respect. However, interestingly, my hit percentage is finally coming up in the Polish line, which had been down in the 50s and 60s in the lower tiers, which have very derpy guns, and I managed to get this thing up to 70. Why? Because it kind of played it like a heavy, a bit more of a face brawler than anything else. You're going to be very frustrated if you attempt to use it as a sniper. You can do that because it's not very fast and it's not getting you around the battlefield, and maybe that's a better second line idea for you, but be aware that you're going to be frustrated by the gun's derpiness quite a bit. Still, 70.83 is not bad. 1.45 in the damage, 1.5 in the destruction. Not amazing, but good. Now, this is interesting. I did say that the armor was situational. Anytime you get about 0.5 and start approaching 1.0 on armor use efficiency, that's a fairly heavily armored tank. 0.33 indicates that the armor was working for me to some extent, but certainly not something I would depend on and say, hey ho, here I come. I'm the armored medium, you can't hurt me. That's more of a, I probably got a lot of bounces that surprised other mediums at tier or lower tier, but anything tier 7 above is just going to blast right through you anyway. 738 experience is okay. 966 damage, not bad. 665, so I'm doing more than I took. 204 assistance. Then 1.15 on spotted is, well, that's NA really, but the destroyed is pretty low, 1.15. That's not very good. I managed a 2,400 damage game in those 39 games with 4 kills. So really no big shakes. There was a nice streak at the end that brought my percentage up to 56. Otherwise, while I streamed this, I really ran right at 50% most of the time. And I won my last, what, 3 games or something. And at that low of a battle count, small sample size, that's going to jack you up there to 56 and make it look more impressive than it really was. I only got a 1 mastery. So if you look at some of the other tier 6s that I fought any kind of battles in, if we go to the Cromwell, for example, at 38 and 50%, I was doing 883, causing 1,223 damage, 883 experience. So quite a bit more, but only running 50%. And that's that low sample size thing coming at you right there. T-34, 85 at 79 battles, 1,000 experience, 1,300 damage. So really a little bit below what I can do in other mediums. And that was just because this was very simply a difficult medium to play as a medium. It just did not have the capability to play like a 3485 would or a Cromwell would. Even if I go up here to the 3000D and 3001P, go into these things, and I'm doing a little bit better with them. 59%, 59%, 900 damage. It looks like this one's about the same at 747 damage right there, running at 59%. So what did I do? I did okay with it. Struggled a little bit. It is not really a medium. It is not really heavy, and that makes it very difficult to find its niche and what it is you're really trying to do with this thing. Let's move on to the next, my setup. As I said, on my setup, I had all of the top modules. Let's take a quick look at the guns, though. I'm going to add this into my reviews from now on. If you're doing the stock gun, you're talking 110 damage and 108 pen, and that is going to really struggle at tier 6. Basically ineffectual against tier 8s. Even with the gold at 124 pen, a tier 8 is going to scoff you unless it happens to be a light tank or you're shooting it in the side. So like I mentioned, you really want to have at least the 75mm as soon as possible, and you should have unlocked that with the tier 5. But even so, it's basically that same tier 5 gun with 135, and you put some gold in there and you got a 175 pen. Again, that's going to mightily struggle against tier 8s. But looking as you get to this larger gun, the 90mm, this is where the tank, if the tank shines, and that's debatable, but if it does, it's with this gun. With a 156 pen, with standard rounds and 240 alpha, and then 240 alpha is still with the, obviously with the premium round, and 198 on the pen, which is getting up there pretty well for a tier 6 medium. That's not a bad penetration number at 198 for dropping 240. You know, the idea with the big gun is that it's a bit of a fear factor, but you've got it on a chassis that can't get around very much, doesn't have a lot of hit points, and doesn't have a lot of armor. That's not really going to make anyone very scared. Yeah, they don't want to get hit by 240, but who cares if they can turn around the corner and shred you before you can even reload that thing in 8 seconds. So that whole idea of a fear factor simply is NA, even though he's carrying that 240 gun. When it's working and you're dropping that 240 and not taking hits back, that's pretty good, but that's not very often. As far as this goes with the equipment slot, I carried a medium caliber gun rammer. I've already stripped the stuff off for the next tank. I had an enhanced gun laying drive, and I carried the vents. You could drop the GLD and go with optics if you wanted to maximize that. I just didn't. I played it more as a face brawler. I did carry 12 APCR. That's the gold round for the Top Gun, and 52 AP. 10 HE. It is a semi-capable HE gun at 90mm. Not amazing, but semi-capable. It can wreck some of the lighter tanks. If you're facing artillery or some of the lower tier stuff at tier 5, you might be able to have a good time with the HE, but I didn't use it too much unless we were talking making sure I reset a cap or something like that, or I was very obviously about to shoot artillery and I had time to reload for 8 bloody seconds to get the shell in there. I had a small repair, a small first aid, and a large fire, because as I have said every time, I hate being lit on fire. But you could run food. And I didn't find this thing to light on fire any more than any other tank out there. So you could certainly do that to improve the gun handling. That would be pretty huge. If you were running vents, brother-in-arms, and food, the gun handling might get to something that's a little bit more comfortable than the derpiness. All right, and that is it for the garage review part. We're going to jump into a couple examples of gameplay for the 40TP Habicha, the Hibachi. For the first example, I've got a game on Redshire. It's a decent game, gets about 2,200 damage. You can see that I've spawned into the south, and I'm headed over towards the blimp on the east side. I'm top tier in a 510, so this should be a pretty good setup for me. If you look at the enemy, there's another 40TP and E2. Nothing really heavily armored, so this big gun should be able to act more like a heavy, and that was my intention. I was pretty much the heavy tank on my team, so I'm going to head over here and fight where the heavies are going to fight. You'll notice that I've got my sweet Christmas camo going on. Here's a fun fact. Did you know the Christmas camo will go on the Polish tanks for the traditional Christmas from last year on tier 6, 8, 9, and 10? Yes, tier 6, 8, 9, and 10. They do not go, for some reason, on the tier 7, which is the tank after this. Anyway, it's pretty funny looking camo. I actually saw it when I was thinking about putting camo on this. I said, why not? Let's do it. It's a silly tank anyway. Now, we've been driving for a while, and I did this on purpose. I usually start closer to the action, but I wanted to let you to see how long it took me to get. A Sherman 3 beat me by miles, and they are not exactly fast tanks. Here I come. So I'm just a heavy. Did you ever see me hit 50? I came nowhere near 50. I am in full speed here, although I am in a little bit mucky ground. I'm doing maybe 30. That is about the best this thing's going to do. I don't know where that 50 number comes from. Now I'm coming up here and trying to stuff these guys, looking for a shot into this dude, and he bounces. And there's one of those bounces I was talking about. It was angled, and he got into the front of my tank, and I was able to avoid. There you go. Sometimes the derpiness does not let you down, and the 220 has lost his mind. He says, I'm a 220. I can just drive in amongst everyone. Look how long that aiming time is. It just took me forever, and I missed as well. So we'll come around here. We got a T67. We got a bunch of guys, and this time I'll wait for the aim, and there we go. Dropping those 240 bombs on those guys as a medium. T67's having a go at me. Getting some bounces, right? I got 315 bounced already. Churchill doesn't have a lot of pen. T67 does, but I'm able to at least bounce one of those little 75 hit point shots from that guy. And I've basically come into the heavy area and done the heavy thing. There's a little 1 pixel shot on the top of the Churchill. And we are pretty much dominating the heavy area over here, but situational. I've got a heavy medium. I see the Leopard doing his thing back here, so I'm backing out, see if I have to deal with him. That's when I finally noticed there's actually a T67 Canary in the coal mine back there, and I'm also noticing that the rest of the team is getting rolled up, so we have to get in here and do something. Got a Matilda BP. There's a Leopard down in the south behind me. We got a Matilda, a Churchill, so quite a few tanks. We'll come around here, and I go by, unfortunately. I'm like, put the brakes on, come around here and hit this guy on the side. I'm really hoping I don't get shot from all the TDs and stuff that are up on the hill there. I know I'm a target at this point. We'll drop him, and now I got to move forward. I'd really like to avoid that S35CA hitting me, but the 34S gets a chunk. And that's a bunch of side armor, so he's going to be able to hit that. I'll stay down in the ravine right here. I want to come up behind these guys if I can and avoid taking shots from the hill. So I'm going to dive down. Here comes the Matilda BP. I actually thought that was the rear of his tank for a minute. He may be. Yes, he is driving backwards, coming at me like a spider monkey, and he's going to burn to the ground, and down goes his buddy, the T67, and we'll turn around. Now, I've been flinging gold like it's going out of style right there. Most of those shots didn't need it, except for maybe a couple of the turret shots. And I'm going to move back onto the middle here. We got quite a few guys up on the hill. I can still have my day ruined by that S35CA guy. Hits really hard. We've also got a couple other TDs up there. The Achilles and the T14 are still hanging out over in the castle, and we have the requisite number of redline snipers hanging out in the back. So me, the T14, and the speedy Sherman 3 are trying to figure out what we're going to do, pushing into these guys who are all bushed up on the top of the hill. I expect the T14 to be obliterated, but apparently there's either nothing with enough vision or there's nobody actually looking that way. I was very surprised he could get into that bush. I see the T40 going, trying to catch him before he gets behind this building right here, but he disappears on me. And now we'll back up. Still looking to find these guys, being careful. Avoiding the temptation of just charging in. There's the S-35. I miss it initially. He actually gets lit. There he is. So he's hanging out up there. There's that decent depression. So coming up that hill, 8 degrees, not too bad. Comfortable. Able to take that shot right there. Wasting gold like you read about. Let's see if I can get a shot on him here. Nope, that goes into the ground. Even with relatively fully zoomed in, struggling to do that. The Hellcat, though, he's up there proving that nobody is up on that hill. I miss a running shot with a massive dispersion. The T-14 is pushing in to try to take the Skoda. There's still the Achilles and the Sioux, and we just basically have them outmatched. I shoot that on the run. That's just pure RNG. That is not something you would expect this gun to do very often at all. But it's one of those shots you just take going into the next position. That one I let zoom in all the way. Get a chunk of him, but the Hellcat gets the kill. And I'm up to 2,000. I got a Su-85 over here and a 34S. I'm actually going to go and see end game what my armor can do, right? So I've got a Su-85. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to front him. Take a shot into his side armor. He's nicely angled right there. And I aimed at the side armor. I hit where I aimed, and I got the result I should have got. It bounced. So 215, a low roll that guy. Down he goes. He actually misses me. And now the Achilles is hitting me with regular AP. He goes through me. Hits me again. That one bounces, but he tracks me. That one goes through. And now I try to cover it with the building. So there's that armor. I thought, it's an Achilles. Let's just push in on him. But he's letting me have it. He's got pretty good pin for a TD. Very strange little tank. But 2 out of 3 go through. And that's kind of what you would expect with the armor. It's not something I would just drive across there and go, I'm a mouse. There's no way the Achilles is going to hit me. Again, another driving shot. This is a lot of RNG, just really loving me right here. Just trying to reload on this dude. And he goes down before I can kill him. And I'm not going to get a piece of the artillery. Why? Because I'm slow. I'm not really a medium. I'm more like a heavy, and that 67. And even if I was a normal speed tier 6 medium, the 67 probably would have beat me up there. But as a 40 TP, I had absolutely no chance to get up there and get any kind of those gobble up the end hit points like the 67 was able to do. And I ended up with 2,486. 690 bounced, which is almost my hit points, almost like carrying an extra tank around. So the armor did a few things for me. Again, I didn't count on it, but along the way it actually saved me quite a bit. Obviously with 279 left, it saved me several times from hits that probably would have taken me out. Ended up with 3 kills. So you get a good idea of the tank overall. It's a very slow medium, fights more like a heavy, and can be quite good when there aren't any real heavies there to punch it in the face. Let's move on to the next example. Here's another game kind of similar to the first one where I looked at the lineup and I said, wow, I'm one of the top tanks right here in a 3.57, and there aren't any other real heavy tanks opposing me, a 3485, a 2801. There's a T1, but other than that, everything's pretty light. So I'm going to act more like a heavy, and I went over here to the west side of the map, but didn't get a lot of help. And a lot of times when I'm first starting to play a tank, I just want to see what it can do. So I'm like, you know what? Heck with it. We're just going to push in here alone and see what we can do top tier of a 3.57 with a tank that wants to be a heavy. Let's see if that combination of it wants to be a heavy, but it supposedly can act like a medium, air quotes. Let's see what that does for us. So we're going to come around here. And I was pretty excited that I might get some hold down fighting and check out the turret capability, but unfortunately nobody showed up to play. The T1 went to the middle. There's the standard fight for the hill, which is probably where I really should have been, and some guys hanging out in the middle near their cap and some of our guys. So I'm just going to no respect the red team and push in. What I do know is it's not much lit up over on the hill over there, and there's not much in the middle with the T1, so there's got to be a lot of tanks. A lot of them fairly quick TDs and whatnot hanging out down here. So let's see what we can find. Right now I'm sort of fixated on coming around the corner and going after these guys who are stacked up over here. The T1, Panzer 4H, I think there's an M4 in there as well, and a 3485. So let's see what we can find. I'm going to come right around here. Haven't been seen yet, so we'll come in and we'll find a little shot on him. So now they know where I'm here. The T1 no effect right now, so take another shot on him. Down he goes, and the M4 is making a run for it. Now the M4 knows I'm here. Unfortunately, I'm staring at him a little bit. I probably had some shots on the 30-45. There we go. So he's making a run. I hit him. But now I have the attention of this 14 TP, which to some extent I don't fear too much. Put another shot into the M4. And everything seems copacetic, but now I've got guys on both sides. So I've got a T-67 behind me, and that is not good because he will pen me all day long. And I fight this pretty poorly. I'm trying to cover up against the 67 and the M4, but now I've got that TP up above, so I've got to pick a direction. I just go at the 67. What I probably should have done was cut right up this right here and given myself a little bit of respite for a moment, but I'm thinking I'm a medium, so I'm like, I'll just go right up this hill and push into this 67. And once I push into 67 and kill him, then I'll be good. But as I'm going up the hill, I'm remembering I am the slowest medium ever, and this was a really bad choice. So then the artillery hits me, because why not? And I'm trying to get to this guy, and I kill him off, and maybe I'll get around the corner. Please let me get around the... Oh, I just got around. Spinning around, can I take on this 14 TP? My lord, I'm about to be killed by a 14 TP. Nope, nope, I'm going to get him. No, he got away. Now, geez. And holy cow, what else do I have coming at me? Well, you should have known there's somebody coming up from behind the M4, and boom, down I go. We end up winning that. I did just enough over there to knock down enough hit points that we were able to keep on going, even though we have all those guys. I don't know why they're still on the hill. They're not shooting anybody, and this crowd especially not really sure what they're doing right here, but we end up winning this game. So the point of this one is, it's kind of the little medium that couldn't. You know, you've heard of the little medium that could, that he could get in there and he could move and he could jink and jive and get to his next position. Well, you're not really going to be able to do medium stuff with this. That was more of taking a heavy into a crossfire situation and basically getting shredded because you're being shot from every direction. That's never a good idea with any tank in this game. I don't recommend that ever, to be quite honest. But my instinct to push one way or the other to minimize my exposure to the rest of them, it just couldn't get out of its own way. It just was too slow to do so, and I ended up going down. But it was good. I did it for science, and there you go. A good example of how this thing does not act as a medium very well. Let's move on to one more example. All right, for the last example, I'm bottom tier, and it's about the best result I had in this tank. We are here on Ruinberg, and I'm going to push into the middle road with it, take a shot on the run, end up actually getting a hit, low roll at 214, and I'm going to go ahead and hide up in this hole here. Got a rev up there, an AMX, a couple AMXs I randomly shoot because I've been streaming for a while and getting tired, and my finger slipped. Take a shot on him, there's a miss. That's that derpiness. I mean, that really should have gone in, no problem. But look how big that dispersion is right there. Now I'm getting in the way of the IS, trying to figure out a way to get around here and get some shots, and he runs off. And rather than expose myself to whatever else is hiding up there, I get out. And now I've got a 40 TP behind us, and I'm just hoping I can back up and get into this nook right here. Only about 18 backwards, so it's not bad going backwards, but it's not great either. The IS-6 is taking the corner. We've got a 3001H, and our IS-6 has gone in a strange direction, so I'm going to come in here and try to support him in a moment. He's come up the middle right there, which is not my favorite thing to do, especially when you've got guys still like the Rev and the other tanks up there owning. The ARL's pushing in, but we still have guys opposing him up there, so it's not an emergency yet, but things are not looking great. We're not in really good positions. So I'm going to feel like I've got to get up here and do something a little different. I'm going to move on up. 40, is it a 45? Yeah, 45 TP takes a hit. Now 45 TP is going to be a bit of a problem. That's a heavy. That's the next tank after this one. And it's actually got some pretty good armor at tier 7. So I'm going to come in here and take a look. What do we got going on? Can't see anything. The IS-6 is full hit points. The TP is there. And our IS-6 is kind of getting beat up, but I've got a lot of help. The Centurion, our other turret, and now I got to push this IS back. Please don't do this. Do not be the guy that drives up behind other people on corners and pushes into them. That's just really boneheaded. Now we've got a JP YOLOing in, so we got to do something here because we're just going to get slowly frittered away if we can't get in here and do something. So I think, you know what, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to kill this 45 TP, no problem. I'll just come around the corner, I'll see him, and no. Poorly aimed. That thing has good armor. I know it has a fairly long reload. I'm going to come in and try to get underneath. No. So now I push 2. So I've already eaten a shot of 350 from him. I push 2. Oh, geez, here he comes. And I block a shot. Either it went into my tracks or I simply blocked it with the armor. Got lucky. Oh, my goodness. Another rushed shot. And now I'm thinking, self, you need to reassess your situation here. So that's not going well. I'm thinking, can I kill this guy off Here comes the T-45 again. I'm thinking, well, I'm just gonna have to take a risky shot into the turret, and I get a high pen roll, so that works out well. There he is. See, IS-6 right into the back, and I don't know what happened to that. That's the derpiness of that gun. You're gonna get those kind of things with this gun. There we go. We aim it in. I'm thinking that JP should take care of that guy pretty quick, right? Like any moment now. Like any moment now, you could kill the Jackson. Any moment now, you could. There he goes. They finally got the guy. The I-6 gets tired of me shooting him in the back and starts to turn his turret, but he's got a lot of other company over there. So I gotta see. All right, what's he looking at? Is he gonna shoot at somebody? There he goes. Looks like he fired. I'm thinking, now I gotta get in here before he reloads. There we go. He's still got his back armor to me, farming some damage. He's killed RS-6, but he doesn't have a lot of good options, just trying to keep himself from dying, and down he goes. So it's not won yet. We're doing well. Got a couple artillery to find. There are some TDs kind of hanging out at the top, so let's go ahead and move off this way. Still sitting on my gold ammo. And we're looking for the AC. Maybe we can get a shot there. Look, he's just really sitting there letting me take that shot. There he's dead. No. That long-range shots with that gun are going to be like that. Now, granted, that was not very many pixels. But it also wasn't very close, was it? AMX runs through the middle of the field and dies, like typically happens when you run through the middle of fields that are surrounded on 3 sides by tanks. And now we're going to go in here, we're going to look for the rest of these guys. There's an ISU lurking around. There's the Chinese TD, and then there's this 34-100 who's wandered out into the middle right here and surprised me that he's actually doing that. So I use this, and now we got the Jackson. Thank you for bumping into me. That's great. Please don't do that. Did I already say that? I think I already made that PSA, and I get hammered by... Oh, our Jackson decided to shoot me. Apparently, him driving into the back of me, that's a problem. So here we go. Down a few hit points from my friend. 266 to be exact. That thing hits hard. Thing's staring in here, kind of looking at me. Take a shot. Unfortunately, that's just a crit. Why would it actually damage him? I'm trying to see if I can get a shot on the ISU, but I can't. I'm looking at the WZ. I'm hoping that he can spin and maybe shoot. Or there we go. Now he's looking at the Jackson. Down he goes. And I don't have to worry about that guy anymore. And we're looking for the artillery, which I don't get a bite of. So 1,879 ends up being with 2 kills. A decent result. Bottom tier. Always good to see that a tank can actually contribute bottom tier, even as a tier 6 medium, if played carefully. And a couple RNG rolls go your way. They're not too bad at all. So there you go. 3 examples of the 40 TP. All right, well, that is it for the review of the 40 TP Habicha, the Hibachi tank, the tier 6 medium Polish tank on the new line. You know, it gets a lot of hate. The whole line's been kind of getting a lot of hate, but frankly, there are some pretty good tanks in the line. And this is a slightly below average medium, but it is certainly not the worst medium out there. And I did enjoy playing it. It was very interesting with the idea of the supposed big stick medium that's relatively slow. I don't think it really worked as well as I would have liked, especially on paper. When you look at the thing's stats, you might go, man, this is actually not bad. But then when you consider the actual speed of it, I'm going back to that 50 kilometers an hour thing. I don't know where on earth that ever came from. It simply does not go that fast. But that being said, it was an interesting tank. I did enjoy it overall playing it, and I think some of that may have to do with the nightmare of the tier 3 and 4 and the averageness of the tier 5. When you get to this thing, you feel like you can actually do some things on the field, or maybe it's more correct to say you feel like you should be able to do some things, but you just can't quite get there because it's so slow. I mean, if they added another 100 horsepower maybe and made this thing actually make 50 kilometers an hour, if it could actually go 50 kilometers an hour, it might be kind of an interesting tank. But I don't think it's one to avoid or one to skip. If you're interested like I am of going through all the lines and playing all the different tanks and playing World of Tanks, you know, such as it is as far as grinding out tanks and trying all the kinds of different kinds, I certainly recommend that you give it a shot. Slightly below average overall as compared to the rest of the tanks, but it's well worth playing and giving a shot. That's all I got. Thanks for tuning in to the review of the 40TP Habicha. Thanks for supporting the channel, guys. We've been moving along pretty good lately. Keep it up, and we will see you.